Hi, welcome to the Stark Museum of Art, one of the nation's most significant collections of American Western art. It takes a diverse team of professionals to maintain the collection and host programs at the Stark Museum. In the Smart Job series, we will be interviewing museum staff to learn about what they do and how potential careers can be found at the museum. My name's Rachel, and I'm an SMA art education scholar. Follow along as I meet the staff and learn all about careers in the museum. Hi, welcome back to Smart Jobs. I'm here in Gallery 3 with Anna, who is our collections manager and registrar. Anna, thank you so much for being on Smart Jobs with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about what a registrar is and a collections manager. What do you do in the Stark Museum?
So the role of a collections manager and registrar, it's sort of combining two different roles, but generally collections and registration go hand in hand in museums, so it's not that much of a stretch. Collections management is really about taking care of the objects that are in the collection of the museum, and you can see those around us and behind us as we're sitting here in the gallery. So we have, in addition to the works that you can see on display when you're down here, we also have other works in the collection that we have in storage, and so it's necessary to track everything and keep everything safe and in the right condition so that we can share it with everyone. Registration, the registration aspect is a lot about paperwork and documentation. So a lot of my job is forms and documents and making sure that we have all of the right documentation for the works in the collection, as well as whenever we want to acquire something to bring it into the collection, that we get all the right forms signed. And when we send anything out on loan, or if we take anything in on loan, that we have all the right forms there.
Well, that's amazing. So you mentioned we have stuff that's not on display. I know we have quite a lot of it. How much stuff would you say? Is there a lot?
Between the house and the museum, we have around 16,000 objects in the collection.
Yeah, and how much of that is on display here?
So a couple hundred. So the museum part of it is probably around 10,000. We'll just estimate, we'll say 10,000 works in the museum collection. And so we have a couple hundred on view at any time. And so it's falling in line with what's actually understood as the field standard in museums, which is about 10% of the collection of an institution is on view at any given time.
That's amazing. Sometimes we don't think about that, but you do change out the stuff that's on display sometimes, don't you?
Yes, we do. That's one of the parts of the job that's related to keeping the collection safe and making sure that it can be around for as long as possible to keep sharing with people. Because we have works like photographs or works on paper or textiles that fade when exposed to light, or the paper they're on can also become brittle, which makes it more likely to break.
So tell me a little bit about what your job is. What kind of stuff do you do on a daily basis? I know some of this stuff is kind of by the project, but what's kind of your daily experience as a collections manager and registrar?
Yeah, a lot of it, like you said, is by the project. So when we're working on a rotation or when we're changing out an exhibit here, because we're a relatively small team, I also work on exhibits. But when we're just going through normal operations, a lot of what I do is on my computer. A lot of it is working in our database. So we have a very large database, obviously, to keep track of, what did I say, around 16,000 between the two venues. And I will also correspond with both staff here about projects, as well as when we're acquiring something, either it's being given to us or we're purchasing it, or if we're loaning a work out or requesting loans for our institution. I correspond a fair amount with colleagues outside of the institution and make sure that we are getting the pieces we need from them, that we're giving them the pieces they need, and making sure that we're getting all of the, T's crossed and I's dotted on both sides so that everything can go well.
Well, let me ask, what for you is one of the highlights of this sort of job?
I think for me, one of the highlights of this sort of job is getting to be really up close and personal with the art. As in my role as collections manager and registrar, I get to handle the works of art. So we we move them. We pull them out of storage for a switch, and I get to measure, and I get to put them into mats to go into frames. And when we acquire something or we send something out on loan, we do what are called condition reports, which are very detailed forms or write-ups, basically, of anything we've noted on the work of art that could be an issue. So cracks or hairs, or there's a lot of paintbrush hairs in a lot of paintings. Cracks, hairs, parts where the painting has been lost, or you can see the canvas underneath, just to note anything that might be an issue. So when it then ships to the lender, they can look at the report we've given them and say, oh, nothing has changed.
Well, that's so cool that like as a collections manager, you probably get to see a lot of things that most people don't. The backs of the paintings, if there's anything written on the back of it there. You see all the little damage, the brush hairs. I don't think I've ever gotten close enough to one of the paintings in a museum to be able to see the brush hairs.
And if you did, a security guard would probably ask you to step back.
That's why we don't get so close. But they're so beautiful at the same time.
Yeah.
So, how did you get interested in this kind of job? How did you come here?
Yeah, I took probably not super roundabout of a way, because I figured out that this was what I wanted to do when I was in college. But I actually started my undergraduate thinking I was going to be an archaeologist. So I went on a couple digs while I was in my undergraduate, and both of those had museum components because they were both in very hot places. So we didn't dig after noon. So we were in the field in the morning, and then in the afternoon we would go into like the little museum associated with the site. And I remember enjoying that part so much more.
Yeah.
Like, the digging was fun, don't get me wrong. It is.
Not a lot of people get to do that.
And it's really neat, but like we rearranged the little museum that was on the site for the one I did after my freshman year. We made little boxes to put some of the books they had in their collection in. We did a lot of I worked in their little database. I did a lot of the sort of work that I do now, but just on a different kind of scale, because I was a student and an intern, sort of. And so I remember thinking after that, I was like, is this the sort of thing one can do as a job?
Yeah.
And I started looking into it and discovered that I could. And that was really where it started. Then I pursued more the museum side. I still have an archaeology degree, but I started looking at internships in museums instead of doing more digs.
So that's a lot of good work experience that kind of contributes. What kind of education do you have? You obviously got your bachelor's, you got your master's.
So in addition to my bachelor's degree, I actually got a master's in museum studies as well.
Do you have any advice for people who maybe don't have a lot of experience yet and want to find out if this is a good suit for them?
Yeah, I think I would say that one of the best things you can do if this is what you're interested in, I would say that one of the best things you can do is start to volunteer or intern at museums. There are so many museums all over, and most of them need help in some way. There are volunteer opportunities in all sorts of museum work. There are internship opportunities at all sorts of museums. And I think really, getting your feet wet and trying it out is one of the ways to know if it's a good fit for you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here and sharing with us today. Thank you all to our viewers for watching, and be sure to check out our other videos on smart jobs. See you next time.